Welcome to the Middle Ages. Here we're going to explore Anglo-Saxon culture. It includes the sense of a history of different peoples that settled in England. The Vikings, the Goths, all these different factions of the Germanic tribes, the French invasions, called the Norman invasions. And we'll see that these influenced England later on in terms of language and culture, and especially their literature. And so we're going to examine Anglo-Saxon language and migration from these different tribes that came in across borders. They were truly immigrants coming into an Anglo country. And so we have this aspect of the first great classic of British literature, which is Beowulf. And so you can see the Germanic influence in Beowulf, the whole idea of the haughty warrior, the hero as warrior. We can see that whole heroic tradition lasting throughout the literature of England. And so we see that these become their stories. They become the tribal stories. They become the modus operandi, if you will, for the people that believe in these legends. And so they hold on to these legends just like our Native American Indians did and other people from other cultures do in their own stories. What's interesting is that today in the postmodern world, narrative has taken a popular turn and people are telling individual stories about their lives. The idea of the Norman conquest was important because the Normans came in with a French influence. And we'll see this in the tales of Marie de France and her interesting way of showing the romance that develops with the harshness against the Anglican Saxon warrior. And then eventually this turns into, we see an authoritarian tradition of King Arthur. He has the idea of chivalry. Don't forget the Middle Ages are the growth of Christianity. And so he sees the knight not only as this warrior, but also the good gentleman, the one who will do a boon for a lady, the one who will do a favor for a lady, the one who will wear her scarf in battle, who will uphold her honor. And so all these are influences coming in from the Germanic and the French influence of these tribes coming into England. And so we see that this later on is a way of the Greek idea of hubris, or what we call pride. And so the pride of the warrior takes place, the pride of their culture, the pride of their stories, telling stories about their heroes. And sometimes the tragedy of the fall of these heroes. We'll see in Beowulf that he is victorious, but then in old age, he has to fight to keep on becoming victorious. And so his fall is a part of their culture. And so we see at the end of Beowulf the funeral rites that are taking place. And the funeral rites are important because it brings people into the afterworld. And so the medieval society is one of wonder and splendor and culture, but it also is one of religious values. The church is being established, and the offices of the church, the clergy, the monks, the friars. We see all these people introduced in the pilgrimage of the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. And so that's going to be a fascinating way to see the culture developing in the Middle Ages. Chaucer becomes very famous as sort of the father of the Middle Age idea of the frame tale. That is, he's telling stories, but he also wants to give you a psychological insight into the characters telling the stories. And so we'll see each story represents two things. One, the character of the narrator, and then second, the story itself, which is called the frame tale. And so the whole idea of satire and irony is also important in Chaucer. He's trying to make fun sometimes of the church and the people that are hypocritical in the church and in their value systems. And so you'll find often that the opposite is true in the character and the way they're telling the story. And then finally, we see the whole idea of the medieval woman being developed. What was her role? We see this whole idea of patriarchalism and this anti-feminism that develops in the Middle Ages. So we have this strong wife of Bath in Chaucer's tales who's trying to give her own manhood ideas. And so the whole idea of the medieval church is really important as a way of showing the strengths but also the weaknesses of those indulgences that they do, the pardons that they do, selling those relics so that people can be finding salvation in the other world. And so keep this in mind as you study the Middle Ages. Have fun.